what I was doing is you can see here the web docs API. Look at all this stuff. Looking for node. This is one we were looking at before. If you notice some of these SVGs, those are the and XML. Those are the different kind of APIs that if you were not working in HTML, you'd be looking at that. So this is the node. The node APIs, basically what we're working with, right? As we dig into the document and then the node, each has its own group of methods. All right, let's continue on manipulating the DOM. All right, so we know how to traverse everything now. Well, not everything, but there is, again, I left out some pieces so we don't spend the entire session on traversing the DOM. Up to you to kind of investigate. But the cool stuff happens when you can kind of manipulate the DOM. So we're going to go over creating elements, the text content, inner HTML. We kind of already were discussed, kind of showing that in a previous example, which I'll get back to. And then, of course, getting and setting HTML elements. So we can create elements, insert them into the DOM. We can change the look and feel of them and their text. We can get and set HTML elements, and then we can actually remove branches of the tree if we wanted to. So if you visualize your assignment, you would probably be inserting HTML elements on the fly, and then you'd be removing them, right? So meaning if you were to search for, on page load, you'd iterate over your array, and you would, for each object or element in that array, you would go and append some kind of, whether it be a div tag or a li tag, like a list item to an unordered list, or a table row. You, for however many iterations of that array, you would be inserting or creating a child, and then you would be obviously populating that HTML with the different attributes of your songs. And that would be triggered from, when we get into events, you'd understand that when you click submit, you trigger something, which would do the filtering and then repopulate the DOM. Maybe you need to remove everything, like clear it out. So you have an empty DOM, an empty container for your songs, and then you just quickly build it again. But you need to know how to create elements. So again, we have on that, we have a document.create element. So this method allows HTML elements specified by a tag name or the unknown element if the tag name is not recognized. The following example uses the document create. So we have the document and we create an element. So we're creating a new div element. We can add an HTML snippet to the div. So we can create an empty tag, create an empty div tag, but then we can go inside of that tag and add some inner HTML. So we can add a paragraph nested inside of that div. However, that div has no parent. That element is not part of the tree yet because we haven't done anything with it. We just created an orphan element. Again, also you can add other attributes to your div. So if you wanted to add an ID, you could add an ID attribute. So these are attributes, right? If you remember, maybe you don't, but in HTML there's a whole bunch of attributes: class, ID. There's style. There can be, if there's a text box, width, height, the type of text box. These are attributes, and you can modify them or add them. So here we create a ID for that div tag. And then here we set the CSS class to note in that fashion. But again, we haven't done anything with that. We haven't done anything with that div tag yet, right? So again, in the Node API, so this is the Node API. This is one we're going to be looking at. But for the document create element, or was it here? Right. More information on that one. That's what the syntax looks like. You need to give it a tag name and some options. It returns a new element, as it says the return value. Basic example is this. You have an HTML body, very limited here, and you have some type of container tag. So here we have this div1. They do a function. This would be great, actually, if you were working with your lab. Create a function, add element. So we create this new div tag. We want to give it some content. So they actually do another kind of create.text node, which we didn't cover. But anyhow, you can actually append it. So they're doing a little bit more to it, right? They're adding a child. They're adding more to the node. But either way, the result of that ID, this new div, would be to insert it. So we're actually doing something, using some other things here. But let me look at my example, because my example doesn't have these other new methods here. How in the world can I get to this screen here? There you are. Okay, sorry. All right, so I have a example here where we're going to add something to HTML. So if I share this with you, create an element. Right. So let's see our console. We didn't actually console log it. Let's take a look at it. So what we want to do is we have nothing there. So we have nothing there. We want to create this element div tag. So document.create a div. And then we added an ID to it. And then we added the inner HTML. And then we wanted to append the document to it, right? So we wanted to append the div, we wanted to append to the body, the document body.append.div. So I'm not sure is requesting control. No, sorry, I'm presenting at the moment. However, if you want to share afterwards, you can. Right, so that's what made this section here. It was empty beforehand. So if we inspect it, we actually added the div ID contact. We added this element here. If we wanted to add two of these, okay, well, we could add, all right, we could add a span tag, right? Span equals document.create create element, and we'll create a span tag. And we don't have to give it an ID. We can just give it some inner, we could just give it some text, right? Text content equals, hello, I'm a span. Right. At that point in time, if we console log this span tag, let's see what happens. And if we also console log the fact that, does the span tag have a parent? I don't think so, because it's an orphan tag. It's just sitting there. Right. So it says, hello, I was gonna say fan. Hello, I'm a span. And it has no parent at this time because we haven't attached it. We haven't done anything with it. So now we have an option now. We can either attach it to this body tag, similar to this div, or we can attach it to the div, or we could attach it to both, to be honest. So let's do this again, and what we're gonna do here again. So we're gonna say document, let's attach to the body, document.body.append child, and we're gonna attach that span tag. At that point in time, it should have a parent now because the parent should be the body. Parent should be the body tag. Let's see. All right, so you can see now I added to the DOM, and I do have the parent tag, which is the body, which is awesome. So now I might also want to append, why not? I have the span tag here. I'll just append it to the div as well. Append child to the span. So I'm going to add the span to this as well. Did it work? Did it work? Did it work? It didn't seem to like that, did it? So let's see. It did actually add it. Okay, it did add it. But it kind of, let's see. Yes, I think I have to create. So what it did is it assigned it once, and then after that, it didn't assign it again. Okay, it basically took that reference of that node, which is smart, appended it to the body, but then by reference, it appended it to it moved it, basically moved it from the body to within that div tag. That's interesting, right? So what that means, what that says to me is I need to create a different span tag. Let's see. Span2, and this is going to be hello world 2. Hello IM span2. Let's see. Now this should allow us to append it properly. Let's see what happens. Maybe there's some weirdness going on. All right. So that actually looked like it worked. So inside of the div tag, the first reference to span2, and then to the body tag, this other reference here. Because it probably doesn't, it can't add the same tag twice. It adds it once. So that makes some sense to me. So you could actually, I don't know, you could do some crazy stuff if you want, probably. Let's see if we can do it. I don't know. Let's see if we can do this. If we had a function, constant add children, something like this, I don't know. Inside of this, we have a for loop, I don't know, for one of our loops, if you remember. So if we set I is less than 100, let's do something like 100. So we're going to, doesn't like this. All right. When you guys learn the arrow function, you will not have to write function again anymore. That's in ES6. Let's see if we can do this. If it allows us to do this, let's check. You never know. Live programming on the go. Add children. So my expectation is this would run. Hey, how would I do this? Actually output the counter as well. Let's see what happens. Hopefully the best is going to crash on us. No, it worked. All right. So you see what it did there. It basically, we don't have a breakpoint at this point. We could probably clean that up a little bit. So maybe instead of text content, maybe we want to get into modifying that inner HTML, and then maybe we want to include I don't know, maybe we want to include like a bold or something like that. Maybe we want to end that bold tag, and then maybe we want to add like a break tag or something like that. A line break. Sorry, line break. Don't bark at me. So now it's probably going to say you need to wrap this. Maybe can we wrap it? Let's see. Without escaping it, you never know, right? Something like this. Maybe not. It's not going to like it. What's it saying here? It doesn't like this. My word. Quotes everywhere. Double quotes. All right. Let's see, is it gonna work? Yeah, it did. All right. So in a way, it did. It's just an output. Some of that. Yeah, probably it's a string now, so I had to use a template literal or something like that. Anyhow, you can see there 100 times. If I made a while loop, I could continue to build from the DOM. So I quickly added, if we inspect it, you can see inside of here that the span tag has been added to the content tag, and it hasn't been added to the body. And yes, we have 100 of those on the fly. So we modified the DOM. That was our first step of many. So we have actually a lot to go through, but that's creating elements. So you know what I have, all right, let's listen to it. Why not? I had a video as well, so it's usually 5 minutes. Let's actually look at it. That guy usually breaks it up, and I'll come back in a second. So let me know if you can't hear this. Hopefully it's just 5 minutes.
Yo, what's going on, guys? You're watching JavaScript for Beginners lesson 37, and in this video we're going to start adding elements to the DOM. Alright then, so in the last few lessons I've been teaching you how to go into the HTML, grab elements, and then change the content of them elements, or change the attributes of those elements, right? Now what I want to show you how to do is create brand new elements, and then put those into the HTML where you want to put them. And to do that, we have to follow 2 steps. Step 1 is to create that element in JavaScript. And when we've created that element, that's just kind of sitting around in the middle of nowhere. It's not in the document yet, right? So step 2 is to take that element we've created in JavaScript and push it into the HTML where we want to do it. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to walk you through that process right now. So first things first, where are we going to put a new element? Well, I've chosen this navigation right here. I've decided that currently it's got 3 links. I want a 4th. I want a link to a blog, right? So to do that, I'm going to have to insert a new li element right here at the bottom, and then after, or within that, sorry, a new a tag, okay? So let's create those elements. Now to create a new element, we're going to store them in variables. So I'll say var new li equals document, and then the method that we use to create a new element is simply create element. Dead simple, right? And then within the brackets, we have to specify the type of element we want to create. Now we want to create an li tag, so I'll just type li and then press enter. That there, my friends, has created a new li tag. So if I call that now new li, there it is. It's empty, nothing in it, but there it is. So now we need to create a new a tag because that's what's inside here, right? So to do that, we'll create a new variable and we'll say new a equals document dot create element, exactly the same way we did the one above, and then this time we want an a tag. And that there has created a new a tag. So let's just call it to make sure, and there we go. Cool. All right then, so we've created our new elements. The next thing we need to do is go into the HTML and pop them in where we want them to. Now, I stack right here. So to do that, I'm going to have to grab this UL tag and then insert it within that UL tag. And to do that, I'm going to use a combination of get element by ID to grab this nav right here. And then within that, I'm going to use get element by tag name to grab this UL, which is going to return an array of one element, just this UL right here. And then once I've got that, I can insert this li and this a tag within it. Make sense, right? Cool. So let's do that. Let's say var menu equals document dot get elements by ID, and then the ID we want is this one right here, main nav. And then within that, I'm going to say get elements by tag name, and then we want UL because that's going to grab this UL right here within the main nav. And then because that's going to return an array with only one spot in it, we can just shorten this by adding the array notation at the end here and specifying we want the 0th position within that array. And that there, my friends, is going to return to us the menu UL, like that. Okay? Cool. So now we've got that, we can start adding the new elements to it, which is step 2. So the way we do that is called the menu variable we've just created, dot, and then we say append child. That is the method name, okay? And what we're saying is append a new child to this menu item that we've got here. Append a new element, right? And the element we want to append to that menu is this li, new li. So let's do that. Cool, it's added this 4th li tag right on the end there. Okay, so currently there's nothing in this li tag, so what we need to do is append this a tag that we created to that li tag, right? Because the a tags are within the li tag. So let's do that. We'll grab new li, which is the li tag we've just created and put in here, and we'll say we want to append a child to that, append child, and the child we want to append to that is this new a, the a tag, right there, like that. And that there should insert the a tag right between the li tags. Cool. Alright, so the only thing missing now is the text between these a tags. And I'm just going to simply use inner HTML to do that. I'm going to say new a dot inner HTML equals blog. Just like that. And right there we should see blog. Now it's not shown up here because the CSS is controlling the height of this menu, but if I inspect that element, go to the UL, the main nav, it's got height 200 pixels. If I say auto, then it should show right there. We've inserted that blog link at the bottom. We could go in and we could use set attribute to give this a href attribute, so it's actually got a link to somewhere. I'm not going to do that in this tutorial. I just want you to know how to insert elements. Alright, so what if we wanted to insert an li tag at the top? We don't want to insert it, right down here at the bottom. We want to insert it at the top or somewhere else. Well, we can use another method, and that's called insert before. All right. So how do we do that? Well, same again. We want to insert it within this menu. So we call the method on this menu. We'll say menu dot insert before, and then this takes two parameters. Okay. The first parameter is going to be the new item that we want to insert. Again, we don't need quotations, sorry. And the new item is going to be new li. All right. And then after that, we have to specify another parameter, and this is the parameter that we want to insert our new element before. All right. And that, my friends, is going to be before this one right here. So I'm going to say insert that before menu dot get elements by tag name, and that's going to grab all these li tags, right? It's going to return an array of those li tags all there, and I want it before the 0th position. Okay, so I want it before the first one. So let's try that. Let's call it, and this time you can see we're going to get an li right at the top which says blog. Okay, it's taken it back out here because this element, this new li, was the one that was here, so it's taken it, removed it, and put it right at the top over there instead. All right, guys, so that is how we insert new elements.
All right. All right, so if you notice there, he used another one called insert before, and there was cloning, so there's different other methods there. But one thing to note here is the chaining going on here. You see, he said method dot get element by ID, which is the main nav, and then get elements by tag name, the UL, and then return the array. You could do that, but that whole thing could have been solved if that UL there actually had an ID on it, because then you wouldn't have to dig down and traverse down into the nodes. So if you have control over your HTML, that's why it's worthwhile putting IDs on things that you want to grab onto, because then you could just use document.query, query selector, or get element by ID, and you're done. You don't have to do this chaining to dig down and try to find, the main nav UL, the first element. You don't have to do that. But when you work on an HTML, maybe stuff that's auto-generated, you're not going to have everything that has an ID, and you may need to do this, but I would encourage you in your labs and assignments, if you want to grab onto something, either put a class on it, attribute on it. Whether or not the class has a style, that's fine. You just use it to grab onto, or you put an ID on it or something like that, just so you have an easy way to get those important nodes that you may need easily without having to go through all that. All right, so have a bit to chug through. Let's see how far we can get before.
Mike, I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so why do we need the part that we discussed, just now? Because we can just add the new tags in the HTML itself. Why do we even need, is there any real world application for this, or is it just more of a nice to have kind of feature?
Why would you need to chain in this way? Like chain in this manner? Is that what you're saying?
No, chaining I understand. But why do we need to add a new element using the console? So because we already have the HTML, we can just make changes in the backend. So
oh, well, in the console is only for demo purposes, right? You would never do this. Like, you're just demonstrating how you could do it. But ideally, you would never use the console to build your apps, right? This is only for exercises. Yeah, you would never have a user do this. Really what it's demonstrating is that you may be able to dynamically add elements. So I know your point is you may have access to the HTML, and that's fine. But you may have some very dynamic stuff happening that is more dynamic than just a web page or a dropdown. Maybe you have a game or something like that, and you need to add elements and take them away, and therefore you need it to be very dynamic, right? But if you have a static website, to your point, why would you want to do something like this? And to be honest, with a static website, you wouldn't create elements. Well, that's not true. I have to actually tell you that. Good point. I'll give you a real
like a checklist kind of program. list
I'll give you a
might be
real
needed.
world application right here. So we have a concept on this website called breadcrumbs. And the breadcrumbs, what happens is when I drill down into the different categories on this site, so if I go to reference.language, here you can see here, these elements have now been inserted into the DOM, right? There's like a search chip and there's a breadcrumb here. So as I am navigating down, these elements are being added to the DOM to reflect the breadcrumb. So if I were to, let's see, I select a different one now, like, let's see if this will work here. So now you can see here, this kind of path has been added dynamically. If I click this, it'll be, then we haven't covered remove child or remove element, but if we click this, it'll remove that. And if we go backwards as well. In fact, if I click this, I need to actually remove it from the whole screen and kick off a new search, right? And you can see it's removed and now it kicks off. So that's actually an example of why you might want a dynamic HTML elements, right? So for navigation purposes. And there's a lot of other ones, but to your point, if you have a static website, why would you want that? Because you have the HTML, it's true, but you may need something like this that's dynamic, that needs to build as the user, based on user action, right? So that's a key, that's a good example actually. So if you were to inspect that code, you would see create child, remove child, and those some things that we are learning. But normally, if you have a static website that doesn't change, you wouldn't actually use this. And to be honest, you would never use the console to make these changes. That's only for our exercises. All right, so in the same manner, right, we've already used this as well, right? So creating and inserting, but we have append. So the append method is the same deal, right? Append method is the part of the node interface, allows you to add a node to the end of the list of the child nodes. We've probably used this already, of a specified parent node. Once again, if the child node is a reference to an existing node in the document, the append node method moves the child from its current position to the new position. We already saw this, where we tried to add to the body and then we tried to add to the div and it basically moved it on us. It didn't create two, it just referenced the old one and did the reconciliation. So here's an example here. Create a new paragraph element and append it to the end of the document body. So we did this same deal. We've already used append, so we're just covering it. So we append the child to the body. And then again, chaining might not work as expected due to append child returning a child element. So you may get into, so the result of this will be a child element. So you may not exactly be able to append again. So just be aware of that. So here's an example here. Actually, I'll get into my other example here before I do that one, because that one's a little confusing. All right, so if I have a document here that I wanted to append, and you can see here, the markup is just like a menu. And if we inspect it, it'll be LIs, obviously, with these. So as I probably can remember, there was a UL, probably similar to your lab, I believe, or one of the questions, maybe. You grab onto the parent and you dynamically add these menus. Again, you probably never do this unless there was some situation where based on like administrator level, you needed to insert nodes, but really you would hide the visibility. However, like in navigation, you might need to do something like that. All right, so what we did is we had this parent menu. We needed to grab onto it, and I did it in a different way. I created a function. Instead of doing it multiple times, I created a little helper method for myself. And basically what I did first was grab that menu. And I could certainly do it the long way, which is perfectly fine, manually add them. But what I did is I just created this function to, number one, create the LI. So then I have the LI element. And then I give it whatever variable is passed in. So the content would be, home services about us. And then I return this fragment. So now I have a fragment here, or an element. And then based on that, I append it. So I just keep appending it and appending it and appending it in that manner. So again, you can certainly do it the long way. I just use my knowledge of functions to create like a helper method. So, so the code's a little bit more compact. But again, ID is important because I can grab onto it. If I didn't have that ID, then I would have to do some other kind of traversal to get it, right? Right. So in this situation here, so we're going to move something, and this is just demonstrating how if we move something, it basically will it'll do the reconciliation, right? We probably want to move. So if we have two lists here, we have Everest, Fuji, another mountain, then we have a second list of mountains, and we want to move one from the other. So we want to move one document, one element from the other. So first we get the first list. So we get the first list, and then we get the first element, which is Everest. So if we look back on it, we're selecting Everest. We're just doing we're selecting this by ID, and we're getting the first child. And now we want to move this first child. We probably want to grab this up by ID, and we want to move it. Whether we want to move it to the end or insert to the beginning, it doesn't matter. But in this example, we grab that second list and we append it. So it's going to append it to near the end. And the API is going to do the reconciliation for you. So it's going to regenerate that tree, and it's going to actually move that node from one branch to the other in the browser. So basically, this is kind of what happens, right? We grab this and we move it. It ends up reconciling like this over to this side. So you can see that it will actually move it and then use the append child to move the first child element from the first list to the second. So this diagram is a little bit strange. It's actually showing how it's moving to the bottom and then moving across. Maybe that's how it reconciles. Maybe that's how it does it. But know that reconciliation is handled by the browser and the DOM tree. That's if you were working with that static HTML document, you wouldn't be able to do this. The interface in that document object model allows this. So we talked about text and inner HTML, so this should be review a little bit. So that's the inside piece. We've already kind of worked with it, right? So the text content of the node interface represents that text content in there. So you can use the text content to get the element content. So you can use it, get element by ID and that text content, or set it. So you can also set it as well, right? So we can actually get it that internal without the tags. So we're not using the inner HTML, which would give us the span tag there. We're actually grabbing that content. If you see here, I use my pointer, right here is just all of this with the tags stripped out. So it's the text content, not the inner HTML. Inner HTML element of the inner text, right? So the inner text property of the HTML element represents the rendered text. So we may actually get, if we actually get element by ID and then get that inner text. So, but we can actually, let me actually look at an example first. So we actually have the moving example. We already went through that as well. We saw that it actually moved the element from one list to the other. We wanted to run that, see what that looks like. We could actually inspect it a little bit. So it took this element here, Everest, from this list and moved it. So if I didn't actually run this, if I didn't actually move this append here, so if I just created a reference to the first list, created a reference to Everest, and created a reference to the second list, but I didn't actually append anything, then there'd be no modification and there'd be no manipulation of the DOM, right? So there, we look at that. Everest is at the top. So what needs to happen is Fuji and this other need to be shifted upwards, and then this needs to be placed at the bottom. And that will happen by that append child. It'll figure it out. So moving from one list to the next, you can see there that it'll actually move everything up, and it also redraws the tree. So these changes are re-rendering the tree. And if you noticed how it refreshed, it took a little while to actually look at this here. So if we were doing this on the fly, you would notice a page refresh like we were doing. And it's actually very costly to do that refresh when we are working with the client side. when we deal with React, React doesn't actually refresh the whole tree. It actually has a mechanism inside of it to only refresh the pieces that it needs to. It doesn't redraw the whole tree. It's actually, the way they go about doing things is very interesting. It makes it very fast. Anyhow, that's kind of beyond the point. So here's an example in the text content. So we have this note right here, and we're going to output the text content, which is going to just display, let's look at it. Text content versus the inner text. Why not? Let's do it by a code example, because that is more descriptive for us. All right, so let's look at this, and let's look at the output. All right, so if you can see, there you go. So it's like a picture's worth 1,000 words here, right? So if we look at that note there, we have JavaScript text demo, but we have a lot of white space here, and we have a comment, right? We have some text that's hidden, and we have a comment. So if you were to run the inner text, the text content will give you this with the spacing and the hidden text. It'll actually give you everything. Whereas if you run the inner text here, it'll actually just give you the JavaScript text content. It won't give you the hidden text. It will not respect those spaces. It just gives you what is visible in the browser. So it's just giving you what's visible to the user, and it's this right here. Whereas the other content actually gives you all the content, including some of this stuff, right? The hidden text and all that. So you need to run these examples to really kind of see how they work, right? So that's actually, it's kind of interesting. Now, I wouldn't want this hidden text, so I would actually rather have the inner text. And most often, I rarely use the text content, which kind of trips me up sometimes because, usually I'm just navigating and changing the inner text. And on that note, we had that example previously where we needed to, where is it here? Not this one. This one here, where we needed to, programming on the fly. I forgot how to escape it properly. I probably used the wrong backtick. So if we wanted to change the color here to red, if you notice, I'm changing this color to red. I had to set the inner HTML. So this is not the inner text. We'll get to that in a second. But I had to escape my quotes in a way that the browser understood, so that when it renders, it'll actually change the color of this tab on the fly. But that's inner HTML, and this is inner text. So inner text versus text content. So inner text is easily confused with the text content. Yeah, no kidding. It is confusing. But there are important differences between the two. Basically, inner text is aware of the rendered appearance, where the text content is not. So you got to keep that in mind. The inner text returns the human readable text that takes CSS into account. So as we noticed, we didn't see the hidden part, we saw what was rendered. So that's the difference between those two. All right, so just because text is a bit confusing, we might as well just, again, take a look at it in some more detail. And let's take a look quickly. Hopefully it's only 5 minutes. Oh my God, it's shrunk.
I needed an online store for my jewelry design business. So Shop Here, powered by Google.
Yo, what's happening, gang? Welcome to your 5th JavaScript and the DOM tutorial. And in this video, I'm finally going to show you how to edit HTML and insert text into the DOM. Alright then, so in the last tutorial, if you can remember that far back, I showed you how to use 2 different methods to query the DOM. Query selector and query select all, and we're using one of those here, query select all, to grab all the elements which have a class of name that are inside an li tag inside the book list ID. So just to have a look at those, if we inspect the elements, we can see this has a class of name inside an li inside the book list, and there's 4 of those in total inside each one of these li tags. Right, so it's going to grab all of those spans with a class of name and store them inside this variable right here called books. So then, now we've queried the DOM, I want to start showing you how we can start to edit the DOM. And in this tutorial, I'm going to show you 2 different properties, the text content and how we can change that, and also the inner HTML and how we can change that. So we'll do the text content first of all. So say, for example, I want to cycle through these books and I want to, first of all, log the text content of each book to the console, and then maybe we'll change it. So first of all, we know we need to turn this into an array or use a for loop. I'm going to use the array method. So say array.from, and we want to turn the books collection into an array. Once we've done that, we can use the for each method to cycle through those and pass in a function which is going to fire on each book. It's going to take the individual book as well through each iteration, and we can do something with that book. Hey gang, it's Sean here from the future, and I just wanted to clarify one point before we move any further, and that's because in the code I just said that we had to turn our books variable into an array before we cycle through them. Now to grab the books, I used a method called querySelectAll, and when we use this particular method right here, that actually returns to us a node list and not a HTML collection. Now we can use the for each method directly on a node list without turning it into an array. Okay, so we could do something like books.for each without turning the books into an array. So I just wanted to let you know that, because there will be times whereby I'm turning things like this into an array before using the for each method, and we don't have to do that. Now, there's nothing wrong with turning something into an array. It's still going to behave the same way. And like I said, I will still be doing that throughout this course because I've already recorded the videos. However, I just wanted to let you know that you don't have to do that when you use this method right here and it returns a node list. However, when you use this method, get elements by class name or by tag name, then this returns a HTML collection, and you still do need to use the array.from method to turn it into an array before we use the for each method on it. Okay, so when you use this method, you don't need it. When you use this method, you do need it. For now, we're just going to log it to the console. So I'll say console.log, and then we're going to log the book.text content. Okay, so this property right here, text content, is going to grab the text within this element right here, this HTML element. So if we save this now and refresh over here, go into the console, we can see we have each one of these right here logged to the console. This is the text content inside each one of these spans, right? So that's how we retrieve the text content. But say we want to change the text content, well, we can do. So instead of logging it to the console, let's say book.text content is equal to something else. So we'll set it equal to test and save that. And now if we refresh, we can see each one has a text content of test, right? So it's overwritten the previous content and replaced it with this. Now, we might not want to do that. That's a bit daft. Instead, what we could do is append to the content. So instead of replacing it completely, we could append to it by saying plus equals. That's how we append something to a string. Remember, at the end of the day, this is just a string, the text content of an element. So we're going to append something to it instead, and I'm going to append space and then in brackets book title. So if I save that now and go over here, we can see the original content is still there, but we've appended some more text content, which is the book title in brackets. So I'm just letting people know, in case they didn't already know, that this is in fact the book title. All right, cool. So that's how we change or update the text content of a particular element. Now, how do we update the HTML? Well, first of all, I want to grab a different element on the page. We'll grab this one, book list, and go over here. I'm going to use the query selector again. This time, I'm going to create a constant called book list. Set that equal to document.querySelector. This time, I don't need to use query selector all because there's only one of the element I want to grab, and it's book list. So let's paste that in there. And we're storing this element now in this variable or this constant right here. So that I can change the inner HTML of an element by using the inner HTML property. But first of all, let's log it to the console. I'm going to say console.log book list, and then the property name is inner, and then in capitals HTML. So let's save this and refresh over here. And we can see all of this HTML is logged to the console. So this is all of the HTML that's inside this book list right here. So the H2, then everything inside this UL, the LIs, etc. All of that has been logged to the console right there. So now let's change it. Say instead of logging it, we want to set it to something else. Well, all we need to say is book list.innerHTML is equal to something. I'm going to set it equal to a H2. And inside this H2, I'll just say books and more books. Close that H2 off. And if I save this dude now, we're going to see over here that instead of the previous content inside the book list, we get this H2 instead. Okay, so it's replaced all of that inner HTML with our own string, this H2 right here. And we can see that over here as well. So we might not always want to replace the whole thing. Sometimes, like up here, we might just want to append to the HTML, and we can do that as well. So I'll still replace the whole thing first of all here, but down below I'm going to append to this now. I'm going to say book list dot inner HTML again, set that equal, or rather plus equal to something, because we're appending to it this time. We're not just completely replacing it. And I'm going to add on a p tag, and inside this p I'll say this is how you add HTML. All right, so close that p tag off and save it. And now we can see that this has been appended to this HTML. All right, so if we inspect this element, we can see now this p tag has been added on. We've not replaced this H2, we've added it on. And in fact, if we comment this line out completely, and all we're doing now is appending this p tag to the bottom of the HTML, we're not replacing the current HTML with this H2. Save it. We can see that we get all the original HTML, and then we get that p tag right at the bottom, right there. And we can see that if we inspect, this is the p tag. We've added it to the inner HTML of this element right here. Make sense? Cool. So my friends, that is how we can change the text content or the inner HTML, or just retrieve it from the DOM.
All right, so on that note, actually, it's a good thing. If you notice their array, if you notice this syntax here, array from books for each. So we haven't really gone into those, but since we learned arrays as data storage items with kind of vanilla JavaScript, when we get into ES6, ECMAScript, the next version, next week, there's a lot of really cool features that are added. So we haven't learned them yet, right? I mean, you've been seeing some constant variables and lets. You don't really know the context behind them yet. But there's a whole bunch of array utilities that are really awesome that basically they take vanilla JavaScript arrays, and then with the new syntax and markup, they add a bunch of really nice utilities that make life very easy. One of them is for each. So instead of having an external loop that you learned about for loop, you can actually iterate over everything really quickly just with a quick for each. And then you can provide it a function. It looks a little weird to you, I'm sure, but it's just a really nice way of condensing code and adding utilities. So there's a bunch of really cool stuff coming to the language if you are curious. And we'll learn that. So let's let's continue on. So there was one thing to mention there, I believe, if we look at text. So obviously we already looked at inner HTML and how we can get or set the HTML or XML markup. We are not dealing with XML. To get that, to actually get the inner HTML, you can set the content in a variable, element.innerHTML. When you read the inner HTML element, the browser has to serialize the HTML fragment of the element's descendants. So it's actually serialization going on there. Right, so same deal. We grab the element by the ID. We output the inner HTML, which will probably be this this piece here. So first we'll select the UL by ID, which is menu. And then we use that get element by ID method. Then we get the HTML content of the UL, which will, using the inner HTML, which is this LI home services. Obviously, if we want to get it, we want to set it. So this is how you would set it. We already saw that in the example already, so you kind of get it already how you can do it. You just use the inner.html and set it to the new fragment. You can remove the entire contents of the document by clearing the body element like that. Let's try it. That seems fun. All right, so if we have, let's pick another one here. All right, so first of all, this one most likely will go through all of these elements here. It creates a new one about us and it appends it. So here if we run this one here in our HTML here, it's probably going to go through and add that child element here, which is great about us. So nothing fancy there. And if we were to inspect that, it'll probably give us the same deal. So what they're saying here is that that is what it would expect after that change. And they're saying basically if I go here and say document.inner HTML equals to blank, we can basically destroy the DOM and empty it out. Did it work? It didn't work. So what was it saying here? Go back to the syntax here. Document.body. All right. Sorry, I was. Yes, there you go. You have to make sure you're targeting the right thing. Document.body. Document.body.inner HTML. Does it blow it away? All right. So now it's gone. We have nothing. We have nothing. We basically destroyed our tree. There is nothing left. We have an empty body tag. So if you were a malicious hacker and you inserted one line of JavaScript into a search bar, you could destroy the visual representation of the DOM. You're not modifying any data, but you're basically yeah, you could be malicious and like wreck somebody's web page if you're able to inject that somehow. So without it, if we refresh it, we have some nice HTML, and obviously if we do that, we basically destroy it, and there is no tree. Keep that in your back pocket. All right, but one thing to note about that is there is security risks around this because people can be malicious. People can do script injection. It's actually a very big thing to look out for. So somebody could inject a script, try to do this in older HTML, this would work. You could inject a script that would alert and just trigger an alert, can do a whole bunch of bad stuff and then set the inner HTML. But HTML5 will block this and it will not allow it to execute. But older pages, you could definitely do this. So even if I had tried to do it, I tried it as well. You'll see even the console log will turn red. Like it won't like this. It will not. It'll actually should bark at me if I didn't escape some of this stuff. You can already see here, it's not liking what I'm trying to do. It's gonna, and you see on my right side here, it's saying there's a problem, right? It's not liking. I probably need to escape some of this stuff. Maybe I need to escape some of these things like that. But even still, it doesn't like these script tags in there. And if we were to actually try to run that, it would actually try to suppress it. However, there's a way around it here. So here you could actually get it to trigger, because you could put it inside of an error, inside of an image tag. So you could actually put it inside of an image tag. And let me see what I wrote here. The alert will show because the image cannot load successfully. And on it, if you knew about it, there is an on error handler that'll execute because it can't render number one. So internally it'll fire this on error, and then you can maliciously put in an on alert in there, which is like a script tag, and then you could actually set that. So let's actually try it, see if that works. That's interesting. See, it doesn't. Let's just get rid of this whole problem line here. So if you notice, we're not actually using the script tag here. We're putting an alert inside of a JavaScript method, and then in that way we could actually trigger something. And let's see. I mean, this is theory, right? Let's see it. If we go to run this here, because the error doesn't load up, it does actually trigger an alert. So if the image is broken, we triggered some malicious script in that way. I'm not trying to teach you on how to hack websites or anything, but there are ways to actually trigger security risks, trigger some scripts, and you have to be smart about it. So this way is actually a way around it. It's interesting though. But anyhow, HTML5 will try to block any script tag that you try to inject, just so you know. All right, so let me see if I can get through some of this here. All right, maybe I'll need to cut the video at the end and play it when we get back. But anyhow, so we've talked about adding. We can also remove and replace. So we've only been adding to the DOM, but we can tear it down or replace elements. We already showed you how to quickly just wipe out the DOM tree. We can also remove and replace elements. So you have the same method. If you have append, you also have a remove child. This one here, replace child, method replaces a child node with the given parent node, and you need to give it the new child is the new node to replace the old child with. So this one's a bit of a step because you got to find the old child first, and then you have to replace it. Yeah, that's interesting. Actually, I'll speak about this in a minute, to be honest. So following example, you have that menu item. You probably want to replace one of these. So you obviously get the top level by the ID. Create a new node, which is a new LI, which is home, and then replace the first item. So we're gonna use, if you can see down there, replace child LI. I hate that tab over. It's basically gonna find the first element child. It's gonna grab home page, and we're gonna do a replace with the home. And it's just gonna replace it out. Obviously, we could just change the inner text, but maybe there's more to it than that. Maybe you want to really replace something with a bunch of other features inside of that. So again, so this one removes the last item. So if we had menu, we just wanted to remove the last one. We do remove child with the last element child. So we're just basically removing it, right? Whereas previously we were replacing, right? We were using replace child. We want to replace one with the other. You can also just remove it. So you use the remove child method. And remove child looks like this. You just give it the node to remove, right? So remove child removes the child node from the DOM and returns the remove node. So you don't have to give it the old child to replace. You just find the one you want to get rid of and then just trigger the remove child. Interestingly enough, I'll give you one example. On a live website. This piece we talked about adding this search chip here. It actually internally in that code, it's very interesting. Today I actually had a situation where I was trying to clear some storage or cookie or something like that, which is like some storage to the browser. And my piece of code failed on IE11. Interestingly enough, we were using a method called remove, which is just .remove, right? And where is it here? Node, is it node remove? Somewhere element remove? Node child node remove. So this works all well and good. It works for Chrome. It works for every other browser. But if you scroll down the bottom, it doesn't work for IE. You can see right there. Everything else is supported except for Internet Explorer. So for Internet Explorer 11, this whole thing fails. And to be honest, in our metrics, only 1% of the users use Internet Explorer. But for some reason, our QA tester was testing for Internet Explorer, and my piece didn't work. Therefore, the fix would have to be, if we're going to fix it, is to use remove child. And I have to actually rework that code because remove child is a little bit more work because I have to find the node I want to remove and replace it with the other one. But if you scroll down to the compatibility, it's supported by IE5 and up. So I mean, there you go. Sometimes you need to check these browser compatibilities because some of them just don't work for older browsers. Yes, it's true. All right, so let me just go through those two examples, and then we'll let you work on your lab in a second. All right, so replace element, same deal. Let's see what we did here. So replace an element. So we have again the tag, the same tag. We grab that menu ID. We create this home element, and then we have to replace that one. So this is our new element here, the LI, but we have to target which one we want to replace, which is, you have to actually make sure you're selecting the correct one. So if you see homepage without this replace call, it'll render in this way, homepage, and then if we come across and actually target that one and replace it, we'll actually replace that piece. Again, you could have just changed the inner text in this case. You didn't have to replace the whole element, but we did. Again, so there's a lot more steps involved with that. So then there's the remove one as well. example where we remove the bottom node from that list. And what it looks like, same deal. We select the main menu and remove the last child, right? But we could actually use some looping if we wanted to, right? We could remove everything if we used the while loop. So if we did something like while the menu, while it has a child, well, it has a first child. So basically we would be checking, does it have a child? If it does, remove one, remove this one. Does it have a child? Then remove one. Does it have a child? Then remove one. Does it have a child? No, then stop. So that's how that would work. So let me just run this and refresh it. It should actually remove them all, and it does. So you could actually use some while loops around there if you wanted to clear out some things. At the same time, I'm sure if you wanted to append something else, you could do an infinite running loop and just keep appending and appending and appending in that way. All right, so going back to the lab, that was a lot to take in. We're gonna have, let's look at this for a second here. So we are gonna look at exercise 3. Exercise 3 was using that starter HTML in this this piece. It looks like this, HTML3. We have this markup here. We have a container. So let's see what we want to do with it. I'm sure we want to add something to it. Again, the script tag. Should probably use a script tag here, not in the header. This is going to say build the HTML the following way. Select that container using the creator selector method. Create a paragraph element and append it. Create a span tag and append it. Create an H1 tag and append it. So then your output would look like this. This is a paragraph, this is a span, this is a header. Obviously, you could just take the HTML and just statically put it in, but that's not part of this. So you would be creating elements at the end of the day. It would add to this container there. And again, you can do it one by one, or if you have a good grasp on functions, you could try to attempt to create a helper method that could add it for you that you could use. That's up to you how you implement that. Exercise 4 is just taking again this HTML document here, the starter code. So this is probably one of the other ones from the other examples. So we probably want to manipulate this in some way. And we're going to, what are we going to do with it? Build the HTML output in the following way. Select this element and then remove all the child elements of the container so that it should look like this in this way. So you're going to leave the header tag and remove everything else. All right, so I talked a little bit longer than I had expected, but let's take some time to finish our lab. Hopefully we can do all our homework, not have it drag out. Give you 25 minutes, come back at 9:30 to take up the previous lab, start a quiz, and call it a day, all right? So
Mike, just quickly, so would you be able to share the examples for us to just go through at our time?
Sure. Okay, so what I'll do then, if it helps you, then I will upload the examples to the to my okay, let me show you where I'm going to put them. I don't have my GitHub open, but I can I don't have my Git command line open, but I don't need to bore you with that. So what I'll do in a momentarily is I will upload them here. So if I go to Full Stack Lab 5 starter code, I will create another folder for examples and I'll throw them in there. What you will need to do is come back here momentarily and refresh it. You will see a folder with examples and therefore you can look through them and help yourself with the lab.
Thanks. Thanks, Mike. Yep.
Yeah, no problem. Okay, guys, so work on that. Again, the channels are open with some good folks, tutors to help us out. Hopefully you can get through some of your questions before, so it doesn't drag into tomorrow. We'll come back in like 20 minutes and finish up. All right.